These days, this guy, Lil Tracy, or whatever name or look he was going by when you were first introduced to him, is thought of as an icon in the underground, consistently praised for the sound he pioneered, his eccentric personality, and his relatability. If you were like me when I was 13, you were probably thinking, why is this guy whose hair literally looks like Cheetos and stash resembles someone whose name I can't say on YouTube make such good music? Over the years, a plethora of artists have been influenced by Tracy everywhere. Nowadays, he's kind of just chilling, doing his own thing. However, a lot of people are unaware that he's had one of the most interesting life stories you'll probably ever come across, and I really mean that. So in this video, I'm gonna go over his upbringing, how he came up, and the music he's put out. The story of Lil Tracy. Jazz Ishmael Butler was born in Teaneck, New Jersey and raised in Virginia Beach. He had a very unique upbringing, being born into a musical family, and that doesn't just mean his parents were music enthusiasts. They were both successful musicians in their own respective rights. As a matter of fact, he's the son of hip-hop and R&B royalty. His father, Ishmael Butler, was a rapper, producer, songwriter, and most famously a member of the hip-hop group Digable Planets, a Grammy-winning and Billboard-charting collective. His mother was the lead singer of SWV, a group with multiple singles that hit the Billboard Hot 100 and Grammy nominations. One of them, Sunshine, was even dedicated to Tracy when he was 3 years old because he was his mother's sunshine. Tracy hasn't toured internationally because he said that he's scared of planes, but when he was a kid, he would be on tour buses with his mother all over the world. Even though both his parents were huge contributors to 90s R&B and hip-hop, Tracy wasn't really aware of that. He didn't know that they were famous yet until he was older. Unfortunately, at an early age, his parents split. His father moved to Seattle, Washington, while his mother relocated to Virginia Beach, Virginia. He said, whenever I get in trouble, my mom would send me to Seattle, and whenever I would get in trouble there, I'd get sent back to Virginia. Even though he's found himself back and forth between the two homes, Tracy spent the majority of his upbringing in Virginia Beach. As a kid, Tracy's interests included basketball, skating, and video games, specifically GTA San Andreas, which he had an unhealthy obsession with. Father said he'd spend time on things a lot of kids don't usually stick with, like messing around on GarageBand. It's pretty popular among kids today, so Tracy was a bit ahead of his time. When he was young, he would listen to rappers like Soulja Boy, Waka Flocka, and southern rap such as OJ the Juice Man and Gucci Mane. He described Virginia as boring and would mostly skateboard and do graffiti to kill time. Virginia Beach is a beach community, but it's also a bit of a hippie area too, and Tracy fit right in with the scene. Tracy would skate all the time and can even hard flip.
Albertsons, there's Bonds.
One thing about Tracy was he always had a lot of confidence. He credits his dad for that, saying he's never been scared to try on a look because of the confidence his father instilled in him. Even though he's most popular for his quote-unquote emo music, he never went through an emo phase. He was more punk, which is also a more accurate description of his personality. He discovered punk music through video games, specifically Tony Hawk's Pro Skater soundtrack. He said it changed his life. Around that time, Tracy discovered Tumblr. He used the same name, Soulja Witch, and posted about witch house, lo-fi internet rap, and was an early pioneer of the kawaii goth tropes. He used to take acid and listen to Bala Macab, who makes experimental psychedelic electronic. He used to rep a variety of bands, some of which included the Casualties, South Central Riot Squad, and the Pin. It's okay if you don't know these bands, I didn't. You just need to make the important distinction that they're punk acts, not emo at all. Like pretty much every kid into punk music, Tracy's adolescence was filled with angst and rebellion. He first started using drugs at 14 years old. His first real tattoo was the cross on his face, which he got when he was only 15 years old. Later, he went to an alternative school because he couldn't seem to stay out of trouble and would go to jail occasionally, not for street stuff, mostly things you'd be embarrassed of when you were older. He got caught selling grass in middle school, doing graffiti in broad daylight with a friend, but as he got older, things escalated a bit. Remember how I mentioned his mom, Coco, was famous? She had her own reality show, and one of the episodes, season 1, episode 5, it's called SWV Reunited if you want to watch the show, just in case. I don't know. By the way, I didn't feel like paying 99 cents on YouTube to rewatch the episode, but I remember most of it. It was about the stress Coco, Tracy's mom, was having due to her troublesome son. Remember when he was her sunshine? They talked about one of Tracy's cases for vandalism, which they didn't show the outcome of, but it's implied he beat. And just when you thought things couldn't get worse, they did. He got expelled from his high school in Virginia. He had just gotten into grass and wasn't good at cracking open Dutch Masters, so he brought a knife to school. One day, it fell out of his backpack and made a noise like ding. Tracy's words, not mine. And the kid next to him snitched. Despite the negative consequences, that is pretty iconic, how he was caught with the knife. It would be some awesome foreshadowing of what was to come, as later on him and his switchblade would become inseparable. He got sent to Seattle, where he dropped out of high school after only a couple months into freshman year. So it's safe to say he wasn't a very well-behaved kid growing up. I'm not sure why he acted out so much, but Tracy expressed that when he was young, he always felt like something was missing from school and just the everyday lives of normal people. And even described Virginia as boring, so maybe this was just so he could have fun and add a little thrill to his life. Even though he didn't graduate, high school was where Tracy discovered SoundCloud. And this is how. Tracy was at lunch, he was making music at the time, and one of Tracy's friends was like, yo, your music kind of sounds like this one guy, Curb Lagoop. Tracy had no idea who he was, and Curb was actually the first person to reach out to Tracy, long before Tracy was Thrax's house. Furthermore, people from SoundCloud like Goth Money, not a person, it's a group, and Black Cray, leader of Goth Money, were even more influential to him since they were from Virginia. They had made it, in the scene at least, giving him hope. Being from Virginia, Tracy felt like Cray and members of Goth Money were speaking his language. He really liked the mainstream acts from Virginia like Pharrell as well. When he first started making music, he would record in friends' houses, but he wasn't really going hard with it, which would soon change. At the time, he was fighting a lot with his mom, so Tracy, which by now you know is no stranger to questionable life decisions, ran away from home, stole a tent, and moved into a nearby forest with 3 friends. He used to steal a lot, so he had this terrible mic and a MacBook. He would go to McDonald's to charge it and then record in the tent. This was a risk most people living comfortably wouldn't take, and is where he kicked off his musical career. He was barely scraping by, literally. He would go to the fountain downtown where people threw change, fish out change, and buy something from McDonald's to survive. Tracy's first phase in music was based on his thoughts on acid. He went under multiple aliases: Soldier Witch, Eblis the Persian Dolphin, Young Karma, and the legendary Young Bruh, rest in peace. I'm not going to go over Young Bruh this video. I have another video on him where I go really in depth, so check that out if you're interested. Moving on, Tracy would join a group named Thrax's House, which he really knew of when he was in Seattle. A producer named Nedarb hit him up and said something along the lines of, "You're fired, come stay at Thrax's house." He didn't even tell his mom her sunshine was leaving. He just left. This was in 2014. Tracy was just 18 years old and he was the kid in the group. He made up for it by having a really thick beard for a teenager though. When he first moved to LA, he was sleeping on a couch with Nedarb and Horset. It was ratchet and he describes it as the craziest time in his life. The house was in Boyle Heights and artists would take drugs and record music all day. Tracy finally felt like he fit in. He was like, "I felt like I was powering up." This was also when he decided he would put us all into his music. He was hanging out with people from LA who were making art, and working with these creators drove him to be what he is now. While he was a part of Thrax's House, he was still a young bruh, which I already mentioned I have another video on, so I'm gonna go straight to his days in GBC. GBC, which stood for Goth Boy Clique, was already a branch of Thrax's House. Tracy was a pretty big fan of some of the members, so he asked one of them if he could join, specifically Wicca Phase, and he was like, "Well, you wear the shirt enough," jokingly, and let him in. He was referring to the extremely rare long sleeve Goth Boy Clique shirt, by the way. Pretty soon, he became Lil Tracy, the name he is known for today, and the way he got his name was through Nedarb. He started wearing an old Tracy McGrady jersey that Nedarb was about to throw away and started calling himself Lil Tracy. From there, it just stuck. Although there's an even greater reason for why he changed it, but go watch my video on Young Bruh if you want to know that. Alright, that's the final plug, I promise. As a part of Goth Boy Clique, Tracy pioneered emo rap, which he was already doing, kind of. It just became more of a focus once he joined the group, because that was their niche. And when I say emo rap, no, I don't mean cloud rappers like Young Lean or Blade. No offense to them, I like their music. This is apparent in GBC's only album, yeah, it's true. In the intro, Desire, the most popular song on the album, Tracy describes GBC's aesthetic. He's dressed in all black, got a switchblade on him. Remember he got expelled for a knife in high school? And he's being introspective about his past relationship with a girl. She hurt him and he wishes she loved him the way that she loved drugs. He thinks about the times they shared but knows she won't be a part of his future. He did this again on She Fell Asleep with Cold Heart. This is one of my favorite songs by Tracy, not only because of how good it is, but it's the first song I listened to when I downloaded SoundCloud like 4 or 5 years ago. I was like, so confused why I wasn't on Spotify. Once again, singing about his all-black aesthetic. It's a love song, and Tracy essentially says love is war. He's a soldier though, and you'll be safe with him. Tracy was still a rapper though, and he showed off in songs like Pictures, This Year, and Pop My Collar. The songs are all incredibly catchy, and his wordplay is elite. By saying lines like, "She likes me cause my 100's blue, and I like her cause her stuffed animal's pink," he's able to convey everyone in LA is fake, even if he was a little fake himself. In This Year, he talks about his come up. Last year he was broke, but this year he's going crazy. He's finally got some money, girls, and compares his life to a girl who's finally choosing up on him. In Pop My Collar, he raps about his disregard for his blood alcohol level, and how pretty he is, which makes it easier for him to get girls. In 2017, he dropped 3 tapes, or actually 4 if you count Castles 2. But I'll get to that a little later. Between these projects, he worked with a wide variety of artists. Horsehead, Uno the Activist, Thousand Man Fani, Famous Dex, Lil Duke, Duop Kane, Lil Peep, and Lucky. All of these artists are massively successful in the underground, and Tracy made these songs with them organically. Tracy's Manga is my favorite project by him. It's not the most meaningful album, but it's hard. In Don't Fit, his jeans can't fit the money he has, not only because he bought a medium when he's large. Also, whoever wrote that annotation on Genius, this makes no sense. That's not even how you measure jeans, but whatever. It's because he has too much cash. Get it? Come Again is about Tracy cucking another dude. This guy's girl doesn't even reply to his text, but he can't get enough of Tracy. The other songs are pretty similar in style, just different flows with the same context. Other than being a collaboration with Horsehead, the song is pretty emo. It's Tracy and Horsehead singing about how much they love their exes. The most memorable song is Wait Hold Up. The song has an insane energy to it, and it's unfortunate that he never shot a music video for it, although there's some crazy videos of him performing it. The lyrics, "Wait, Hold Up," fit in perfectly with the prolonged beat drop, and it's about Tracy talking about another dude's girl, a common theme in his music, and just personal life, I guess. He wrote it while he was off ketamine. In Life of a Pop Star, Tracy takes on the role of yet another one of his personas, a goth pop star. In the song, he explains all the tension in his life makes him feel like a pop star, the cameras and money. He's not complaining though, this is the life he chose, so he acts the part. In Drunk Punks, he's racing with other people to see who can live life the fastest. I don't recommend this, by the way. He falls in love fast, but it never lasts. Hennessy is an ode to taking other dudes' girls, and Hennessy, please take a moment to appreciate the beauty. This is the life of a pop star. So those are some of Tracy's best songs as a rapper, but remember, he was still part of Goth Boy Clique, and making emo/goth or sad music, whatever you like to call it. He'd mostly do this with Lil Peep, other than his clique, and together the duo of Tracy and Peep changed the underground and later even the mainstream forever. It began pretty organically while Tracy was locked up for a little. Peep said, "Free young bruh, Lil Tracy ho," in the song Beat It. When Tracy got out, he was like, "Who?" He eventually met Peep through NetArb. I just want to pause and say this is the third huge part of Tracy's career NetArb has had, inviting him to LA, practically giving him his name, and now introducing him to Peep. Tracy also said Peep DM'd him, saying they would change the world together. When Peep and Tracy met, they didn't even really speak. He just told Tracy he had an open for him, and in the first 5 minutes they met, they made white tea. The video was shot the same day, and it quickly hit 1 million views. Tracy has since said that was probably the happiest he had been in a long time. From there, they became best friends and have almost 30 released songs together. They would be dangerously high recording, staying up all night making songs, and would give each other bars while sitting right next to each other. They released 2 projects, Castles and Castles 2. Tracy himself revealed Castles was the high time for doing. In the songs, he raps about how broke he was just a short while ago, but now he has ice on his neck and his exes send him texts, trying to get him back. The lyrics are beautiful. He even says 666 kisses to your face, meaning he'll give you a devil's kiss. On White Wine, the tasteful lyrics continue, saying he can't be friends with you if you weren't friends on MySpace, a Drake-esque line. They have a song called Gods, and I love how it samples Code Geass. It was recorded when they were living near Skid Row. They were overtly intoxicated while making the song, and it only took them 20 minutes to make it. In it, they go bar for bar. Tracy sings, "He be acting like he's real, but it's just a mirage." The next project, Castles 2, had 2 major hits, starting off the underground. Today, they have over 300 million streams. My bad. Just on Spotify, and are technically some of Tracy's biggest songs. Tracy's verses in Witchblades is probably where he gets his emo rep from fans that are unfamiliar with him. In his verse, he chants, "In high school, I was a loner, I was a reject, I was a poser." I'm guessing he probably didn't have friends at some point since he was moving between states so often. As referring to his punk phase I went over earlier. The song samples a 3 Days Grace song, The Real You. The song Your Favorite Dress was recorded by Tracy alone at first. Peep sent him his verse when he was in New York. It's basically Tracy's song. It's peak emo Tracy. If you're wondering what influenced his style, Tracy once said, and I quote, "It all stemmed from the guitar and bands like the Helio Sequence and the Shins. I always liked the guitar sound. I used to listen to that heavy punk stuff, so it was always there, and adding the singing to it just came naturally. He knows that this girl likes him. He urges her to burn her favorite dress and possibly prove her love to him. Even though she lies about her character, he would never lie to her." Also, shout out to whoever annotated this on Genius. Apparently, psychologists at Royal Holloway University have shown that the brain is unable to cope with the combination of visual data and the tactile sensation of kissing. Thus, closing your eyes makes the feeling even more enjoyable. So, yeah, you learn something new every day. At the end of their run, they had definitely left their mark. And if it was not for Tracy and Peep, and of course Goth Boy Clique as well, most of these emo rappers would be working at McDonald's. Not all of them, but most of them. However, all good things come to an end, and Tracy and Peep eventually fell out shortly before Peep's death. Tracy felt like he didn't deserve to be in Peep's shadow. The new fans didn't understand the history of GBC, and the media was only crediting Peep. This wasn't the problem though. Tracy's problem was that Peep failed to use his own voice to defend Tracy, or at least that's what he thought. Remember, Peep was originally a fan and respected what Tracy and GBC were doing before. Peep's management even tried to sign Tracy, but Tracy didn't want to be a sidekick. He felt like he would look like a clown. The other members of GBC told Tracy to stop attacking Peep and even left the group. In the Awful Things music video, Tracy and Peep's relationship was so strained that Tracy wouldn't even show up unless they got him a bottle of Jameson. In the video, he hadn't slept in days. When he yawned at the beginning of the video, it was because he was actually sleepy. He tried to visit Peep at one of his shows on tour, but they wouldn't let him. When Peep passed away, Tracy was in the studio. It was a terrible feeling, and he threw up. Even after they fell out, before Peep passed, Tracy still said Peep was his best friend and a great dude in an interview. Now, he has multiple tattoos to pay homage to his friend. The tattoos on his knuckles say the soul of Peep in Russian. There's a Peep candy in the middle of his forehead, and a red anarchy tat on his face. Looking back, 2017 was Tracy's breakout year, and it was a roller coaster ride. I guess you could say it was the best and worst year of his life. Oftentimes, people describe someone with a lot of momentum as having heat. 2016 and 2017 were that period for Tracy. Everything he touched turned to gold. He had finally started making money, couldn't miss if his life depended on it. His songs racked up millions of streams and views, charted on Billboard, and somehow he managed to blow up in both the emo and popular SoundCloud rap niches at once. 2018 was a tough year for Tracy. He was still emotionally recovering from losing his best friend, and the year was filled with controversy. At that point, Tracy was starting to make good money from his streams, and before one of his shows, he tweeted something I definitely cannot show on YouTube. Sorry, new gens. This show was a disaster. A squad of NYPD officers swarmed the show, and due to his tweet, they blocked him from performing. He told them it was a joke, but they took it very seriously. Perhaps Tracy never grew out of his teenage rebellious punk phase. He was laughing at the time, but he didn't realize what was going to happen to him. He was committed to a psych ward for 7 days. If he left, he would be thrown in jail. There's actually one funny story though. One guy who didn't think that Tracy was in the ward with him would be like, yo, can you go buy me a soda at the store? And then he'd force Tracy to take his money and even be like, get yourself something nice. The same year, he'd go viral for a song Like a Farmer. One night, he and his friends got drunk and spent the night talking like hillbillies. He got a beat and recorded Like a Farmer on the spot. Lil Uzi even got in it. The song was really good, but the aftermath that ensued was really important. He didn't know he was about to inspire one of the longest charting singles in Billboard history, Old Town Road. Lil Nas X actually wanted Tracy on the song at one point and was even surprised Tracy called him out. He didn't rip the song by flow or lyricism really, he just ran with Tracy's ideas and Tracy wasn't having it, aka industrializing the sauce, something that's been happening to Tracy for his entire career. This started a long-lasting beef, and Tracy even shared he was scared to post his music or fits because he feared it would be stolen. By the way, this beef was really in 2019, but Like a Farmer was made in 2018. This wasn't all for Tracy in 2018 though. Like I said, he had a pretty bad year. He actually ended up in the hospital due to a heart attack. The story goes as follows. He was doing a little bit of one evening. Later, he drank some grape juice, thinking it was Sprite. Then he went to a bar and after a couple of shots, he felt like he was having a seizure. He tried to run home, barely staying on his feet. He probably wouldn't have survived if some fans didn't drive screaming by his name. He ran up to them, explained he was having a heart attack, and the shocked fans drove him to the emergency room. His whole left side was numb, and when the nurse told him he had a heart attack, he burst into tears. Since then, he hasn't been into drugs as much, has been trying his hardest to get clean. After all that happened in 2018, Tracy still released music. In fact, one of his biggest songs, Heart, was inspired from the most recently mentioned event. The cover art, a heart with a band-aid listening to an iPod, is supposed to reflect his belief that music is what's going to get him better. A tribute to a year he barely survived. He dropped 2 projects, Designer Talk and Sinner. Designer Talk was filled with flexing expensive brands and clever lines such as chiropract, here from the back. It was mostly him flexing though. At this point, he was really into brands like Fendi, Hermes, Moncler, and Alexander McQueen. One of the songs is literally called Alexander McQueen. In Sinner, Tracy continued his vampire/goth persona and emo rap sound. The EP was even supposed to have Juice WRLD on it, but it wasn't clear due to his label. In the song Tattoos, he sings, I can't see myself in the mirror, which could be interpreted in multiple ways. He could be hinting at him being self-conscious about his appearance or unable to live with his actions, the tattoos serving as scars that remind him of his past, or he could be referring to himself as a vampire because vampires have no reflection in mirrors. Whichever way you'd like to interpret it, it was a really good song, and Sinner was probably Tracy's most meaningful project in 2018. In 2019, things got a lot better. He went on his goth cowboy tour and dropped an album, Anarchy, which remains to be his most mainstream appealing solo work to this day. It's reminiscent of his collaborations with Peep, through titles like Alone in My Castle, and he even said it was dedicated to him. The album is scattered with references to Peep. My 3 favorite tracks are Bad For You, Beautiful Nightmare, and Tightrope. Bad For You is about toxic love. Him and his girl are both horrible for each other. It's about those around hating on his success, as well as his departure from LA, which was needed for his mental health. Beautiful Nightmare is also about a toxic relationship. He uses it as an oxymoron to describe his girlfriend with good looks, who is really bad for him. The love, money, and fame blinds them through and through, and Tracy doesn't see this until it's over, once she's been reduced to nothing but a beautiful nightmare. Tightrope is about Tracy's situation in life. He feels like he can't even breathe without being hated on or having his swag stolen. He's still rich, and he's trying to find the one, someone who won't judge him. Since then, Tracy has stuck to rapping for the most part. Designer Talk 2 was a great album, better than Designer Talk in my opinion, or at least on the same par. He promoted it really well. It had a lot of hype, and musically it did not disappoint. The only criticism that could be made was the lack of risks he took on the album. But who really cares as long as the music is good? It's not like Tracy's a generic rapper or anything. The features range from Chief Keef to Cold Heart of GBC, so it had something for everyone. His most recent project, Saturn Child, was inspired by a lady that works for Caroline Music named Jacqueline Saturn, who helped Tracy a lot. He got a tattoo on his chest for her. He feels like he's very tapped in with the spiritual side. He's from this planet, but also feels like an alien, like he's from Saturn. I loved how he brought back some of his older producers in the album like Big Head, Laderick, Since When, and Better Off Dead. He was experimenting with a new sound again. There's an emo drill song, there's rap, and even elements of pop. Pitchfork gave it a 7.5, and they're pretty tough critics. And of course, for some reason, they had to compare to Drain Gang 2. I don't know why. And that's pretty much everything Tracy's been through. But what does he stand for? What's his appeal? To me, Tracy is the perfect example of staying true to yourself. No matter how you feel about Tracy, his authenticity is admirable. He's never faked anything, and we've seen his raw evolution as an artist. From being a punk-influenced teenager to his spiritual phase as young bruh, his quiet phase, goth phase, which wasn't really a phase, and just development into the musician and man he is today. He's always held his values over fast money or fame, and he's proven this at multiple points in his career. In 2017, he turned down multiple opportunities. One to sign to Peep's management because he knew it wasn't right for him. The other time, he was offered $800,000, which was before he even blew up that year. He knew that it wasn't worth giving up ownership of his music and denied the offer. Since then, he's had multiple opportunities to sell out by either riding the coattails of Lil Peep or using the A-list connections that other rappers in the industry have access to do. He could have easily toned down on his creative choices and pursued a major record label deal, become bigger, but he didn't. He doesn't care. Instead, he uses social media like I did when I was 11, and I mean this in a nice way. He doesn't have the ego that most artists with hundreds of millions of streams have. Furthermore, Tracy's appeal is a lot like Kanye West. Don't get mad, I'll explain. He allows his fans to see his human side by sharing his struggles with mental health, drug abuse, and heartbreak, not only through his music, but just by the way he acts. Anyone following Tracy will notice similar to Kanye, he's pretty bipolar and posts sporadically to social media. He's unhinged, which is why he's loved by so many fans, which he has amassed a cult following of. So that's it for this doc. I go by Rashad Fashir. Feel free to comment anything. I hope you learned something, and check out my video on Young Bruh. See you next time.